thing of the Omer that we're in these days. We started the counting of the Omer during the astrological sign of Aries, right? Which is the ram. And now we just entered Taurus, Iyar. Now that got me thinking of another topic that maybe we should talk a little bit about, especially since there's going to be a Hatzalah conference coming up that I will have to go away for a few days, it's in June, so don't worry about it, not so soon. It's only a month and a half away. And during the Hatzalah conference, I'm going to have to present a little bit on medicine and halacha. So I thought I would do a little rehearsal with you and practice, but I first have to put together what I want to talk about. So give me a couple of weeks for that. So a lot of interesting stuff. Yes.
Last week you were doing Rambam.
Yes.
So connect your medical talk with the Rambam.
Yes, and that's a very good point, because Rambam was a physician, Rambam was a philosopher, Rambam was a rabbi. In fact, I want to elaborate. It dawned on me after you asked the question last week why I didn't answer it more comprehensively. There was another point to your question about the difference between Rambam and Shulchan Aruch. If we have the Rambam, Maimonides gives us all the laws, why do we need a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law? And I will share with you something. I saw it in a letter of the Rebbe, or a talk of the Rebbe, right after you asked the question. And I said, hey, I knew that. Why didn't I tell it to you? So I think I started touching on it, but I'll just elaborate a little bit more for a moment. Halacha, code of Jewish law, Shulchan Aruch, deals with practical Jewish law. So in Shulchan Aruch, you're not going to find laws related to animal sacrifices. You're not going to find laws that are related to tithing in the times of the temple as examples. Why? Because we don't have a temple today. We don't offer sacrifices. We don't give the tithes to the Kohen. So those laws are not mentioned in the Code of Jewish Law. Rambam, on the other hand, gives us the background of the law and all the laws, Kol HaTorah Kula, as it's called. So he gives you the entirety of Jewish law. Also, there are certain laws that perhaps aren't exactly as Rambam rules, but Rambam is giving you just the background, all of biblical law. The laws that are relevant today and the laws that are not relevant today. Whereas when you're going to the Shulchan Aruch, you're going to what's the bottom line? What do we do? They're not giving you the background. They're not giving you the biblical sources. They're just giving you, what do you do? That's the difference. That's perhaps why the Code of Jewish Law is called in Hebrew Shulchan Aruch, which means a set table. Whereas Rambam is giving you all of the laws and the background. When you want to sit down to eat, you don't want to know the recipe. You don't want to know all the ingredients. You just want your fork and knife and sit down to eat. You know, there was a Jew who once came into a restaurant. This guy, Mr. Greenberg, he would come into a restaurant every day to eat. One day he sits down at the table and he ordered a bowl of soup like he usually does. He asks the waiter, he says, try the soup out. Waiter says, is there a problem? He says, try the soup. The waiter asks, what's wrong with it? He says, try it, taste it. It's okay, let me get the manager. I don't know what's wrong. The manager comes, Mr. Goldberg, you come here every day. What's the matter? What's wrong with the soup? Just taste the soup. Okay, the manager says, all right, I'll try. He says, okay, where's the spoon? Aha. All right, so that is the Shulchan Aruch is the set table. You're ready to eat. You want to know what's the law. Rambam is not going into, Rambam goes into the background of the law. He shows you the source in the Torah, where it all comes from. But when you want to know what the law is, that's not your concern about everything else. Although I know with us Jews, how many times here do I get challenged? Where does it say so in the Torah? What's the source? But that's fine, because here we're about discussion, we're about learning, we're about analyzing, and that's okay. You could challenge me. Not always I know the answer, but thank God I have Miriam here who oftentimes does know the answer. But if I don't know the answer, it's okay. I don't claim to be Maimonides. I don't claim to have an encyclopedic knowledge of everything. And it's all right for me to say, I don't know the answer. Let's look into it. We'll get back to it. Yeah.
That, sir, is the definition of a true teacher.
Yeah, thank you.
A teacher who can say, I don't know, I'll look at it.
Right. Doesn't mean my ego doesn't get in the way sometimes. But I'm also, I'm also human. So let's talk a little bit about that, because during this period of the Omer counting, we are about not just counting every day, but making the days count. And we will reconnect it with a question about astrology, and we'll reconnect it with these ideas about this period of the time, and we'll see how it all fits in with each other. You had a question, Sapar? Yeah. Sure. Well, today another contemporary great, yeah, right, right. Don't forget, Shulchan Aruch doesn't deal with a lot of the modern issues that perhaps. That being the case, you do need, times change, but the law doesn't change. Right, and that's why you need people who have a well-versed knowledge of Jewish law, such as you used Rabbi Moshe Feinstein as an example, who they have studied the law well, and they do know how to apply ancient law to modern times and cases. Yeah.
There is a special institute in Jerusalem that specializes in this
Yeah.
kind of problem.
Oh, we've talked about that. That institute is called the Summit Institute, I think. Yeah, they deal a lot with these types of things and how to apply modern law to apply ancient law to modern times, right? But let's first talk about what our conversation at hand right now is. I wanted to talk about the sphere, the counting of the Omer. Please God, tomorrow I'll have PowerPoints and slides. Today I started making it, but I got engaged in a meeting, so I'm not going to put up incomplete slides for you. But let's talk, because something very interesting. This time of, yeah?
Sorry to interrupt, but are you going to discuss why we start the Omer and the counting in Aries?
We could touch on that a little bit. Aries is about, look, we count the Omer through three periods. We start in Aries, the bulk of it is in Taurus, and then we get to Gemini. You know what? I have a good idea. I actually prepared an entire shiur about that. So if you let me do that tomorrow, please God, and we'll connect it to what we talk about today, then what I'll do is give you even slides. I have to just put them together, polish it up, and believe that we could do that tomorrow in a more comprehensive way. In a nutshell, to answer your question, but I'll develop it more tomorrow, is the idea that Aries, the ram, has more of a herd mentality. When the Jews left Egypt, they all came together to go. And we have to remember that when we count the Omer, we are also we have to be together as one. We have to work on working with each other. So what I'll talk about tomorrow, in fact, the theme of this class is how to like the people you love. Because during this period, we also mourn for the students of Rabbi Akiva who died in a plague. And what is its connection to the Omer is something that people wonder about. What's the connection? What are we connecting that to the Omer? Omer is counting. In fact, the Omer is more about the barley offering. So I want to talk today more specifically about the Omer. And tomorrow we'll talk about the students of Rabbi Akiva and how it connects to Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. But another point is Taurus is the bull. And anyone here born and during Taurus? Ooh, tell us about your personality. Yeah. Oh, so you're a Gemini. So am I. Okay, so then you're a Gemini. Yeah.
My daughter's a Taurus.
And
I decide.
You're a true bull. So you're a Taurus? One second. Let's one finish.
What I've noticed in bringing up this child is like a bull. If you approach a bull head on, they're going to charge you. You had to take care to approach this child from the side, very subtly and with reason and caution. That worked.
Fascinating.
But approach him head on, you're going to get the charge of the bull.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But the second point is the Taurus, which Miriam was just describing how a bull, and we have it in human nature as well. But we're going to talk more in the coming weeks when we go into our Supernatural series about how you're not controlled by these things. As much as this might be your horoscope, it doesn't mean that you are controlled by it. In fact, God gives us what's called Bechira Chavshis, free choice. It's interesting illustration from the Talmud that it says a person born, I don't know which horoscope is the sign of blood or related to blood, but it says one who's born in that astrological sign will be somehow related to blood. Their behavior will be blood-like. What's blood-like behavior? Does that mean they'll be a butcher? Does it mean they'll be a murderer? Does it mean they'll be a surgeon? Does it mean they'll be a mohel? Does it mean they'll, phlebotomist, right? What will they be? So the Talmud says it's your choice what you'll be. Every one of us has free choice, and it's for us to decide which one we are going to be. Not Goyish, actually. It's in the Talmud, it's in the Zohar. It's not Goyish. The Talmud talks about the horoscope. Right.
Please, we have the people that wait every 10 minutes that can discuss, but it gets too much, but people keep interrupting. We try to listen to you.
Okay.
But the people keep interrupting. She's wrong.
No problem. I'm open for discussions and points, but I hear you. I hear your point. We haven't even started yet. Okay, so I will please God tomorrow. I was wondering what should this week's shearers be. You've just resolved it. Tomorrow, please God, we will go. I will try to find the sources for you and show you where it is even written in the Talmud about these astrological signs, and the Talmud talks about them. So let us look at it tomorrow, please God, and we'll see how it connects and look a little bit. And then also we'll look at it more when we go into this superstitious or supernatural course that we're going to be looking at as well in the coming weeks. So we'll actually touch on these questions very much in the coming weeks. I don't want to bore you, so we'll look at different ideas as well, but that will be part of it. So this period, and then the Sphira Omer counting concludes in the period of Gemini. So it covers all three periods. It starts in Aries, it continues throughout. The bulk of it is Taurus, the bull. The bull is symbolized in the Omer counting of each day, because each day is an individual. Now, it doesn't exactly fit in with what I'm saying, because the week count also only usually starts in Taurus, not in Aries, although this year it already started in Aries. Aries is more about the week. So we count both the days and the weeks. Why do we count both the days and the weeks? For example, if you didn't count the Omer yet, today was 18 days, right? Today's the 18th day of the Omer. Now, 18, let's think about this for a moment. We counted the Omer last night. What did we say when we counted the Omer? Today is 18 days, which is 2 weeks and 4 days of the Omer counting. Any of you who know basic arithmetic, you could figure out that 18 days is 2 weeks and 4 days. Why do you need to reiterate the day and the week? Remember this point, because we're going to harp on it a little bit more tomorrow. But the answer, in short, is you need both the day, not the Hebrew date of the calendar. Today's the 18th day of the Omer counting. Why do we have to count both the days? Why don't we just say it's 18 days of the Omer counting? We know, if you really want to figure it out, okay, 18 days is 2 weeks and 4 days. Why do we have to say that in our Omer counting? In fact, the Omer counting is a mitzvah on every single one of us. So what's the point of emphasizing both the day and the week? And that connects somewhat to the astrological period, that the day is Taurus, it's the bull, it's about the individual. We're refining ourselves. We're working on ourselves as individuals, but as individuals who are part of a community. And being part of a community, it's not just me, I'm with you. I realize that while the world is my oyster, and the world was created just for me. I mean, it's a great expression. I ever told you there was a great rabbi, had 2 notes in his pockets. One pocket had the note, the whole world was created just for me. The other note in his pocket said, I'm but dust and ashes. Why would he have both notes? What was he trying to remind himself? A very important and profound point. And that is, on the one hand, I realize I am the pinnacle of creation. God created the world for me. You think about Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year is celebrated on what day of creation? The 6th day of creation, not the 1st day of creation. It means we're not just celebrating the creation of the world. We are celebrating the ultimate purpose, the raison d'etre of the world's existence, which is for humanity. We make the difference. And you can actually see that in the Torah portion sequence that we just read. In the Parsha of Shmini, it concluded with the laws of kosher. It tells us about all the birds, about the fish, the birds, the animals that are kosher, right? It gives us the signs. Birds, fish have to have, fins and scales, and the birds, the Torah tells us the tradition about which birds are not kosher. It's interesting that it negates which ones, and it's a tradition of which ones are kosher. And then it goes on to tell us about the animals, split hooves, and chewing its cud, regurgitating, lots of lessons that I don't want to digress into that. But then it goes into the birth of a child. In the portion of Tazria Metzora, which we just read this Shabbos, it starts off with life and it ends with the birth, with childbirth, right? And there's two interesting things with juxtaposition, because the other theme of the portion is tsarat. Tsarat is the leprous skin condition, not a dermatological, a medical condition, but rather a spiritual malady with a physical manifestation. And what's the connection? So I'll tell you two connections, okay, based on what we're discussing here. Connection number one is why Rashi asks in last week's parsha, why do the fish, birds, and animals precede the laws of man? Shouldn't man come first? Aren't we more important? Those are to serve us. And Rashi answers that it's following the sequence of creation. What came first in creation? The bird, well, if you go through each day of creation, but if you look at the animals, the fish, birds, and animals preceded man. And therefore, the sages tell us that it is a lesson for us as well. Why did they precede us? Because God gave us a ready-made world to come into. A VIP guest comes to a function, attends an event. You don't say, okay, now start peeling the vegetables for the salad, start getting the catering ready. The VIP comes last to the event that's ready-made for them. The tables are set, the food is ready to eat, everything is done, right? So the same sense, we are the pinnacle, the ultimate purpose of the world's existence. God brought us into a world that's ready-made with everything there for us. That's one way to see it. The other way to see it is, well, God made us last. Even a little fish, a little goldfish, a little pigeon, a tiny little mosquito, a gnat, an ant, they all preceded us. Don't get on your high horse and think you're the best, you're the greatest, okay? And that's an important point for us as well, because in life, we sometimes have to realize which one am I? Am I being the ultimate purpose of existence? Am I really living up to why God created me? Sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't. If you look at a story that happened in Israel last week, I was thinking about talking about that. Maybe we'll do that Wednesday, sure. Is a story about a woman and her husband who moved to Israel. The D family, you familiar with them? I'm sure you read about them in the news. And Rabbi Leo D was driving with his boys in one car, and his wife, what was her name? Lori D, the Rebbitzin, in the car behind, and their two kids, Maya and Rina, I think, in the other car, and a terrorist opened fire on them. And we were talking about it in our Hatzalah training the other day, because we were discussing specifics about, in Hatzalah, we used to only treat the patient, but we opened a division that I'm involved with as well called CRU, the Crisis Response Unit. And the CRU is about treating bystanders, family, friends, anyone else who's impacted. And the idea is that while we have to most critically take care of the patient, we've realized over the years that oftentimes there's collateral damage as well. There are relatives, there are friends, there are people who are completely hurt and shocked, and you never know how they could deteriorate. So let's try to address them as well. And we have some of our medics who do it, and we also have rabbis and lay leaders in the community who get involved in that too. And what's interesting is using this case study, we looked at it about sometimes a person sees an incident. I remember in 1998, my friends and I were driving upstate New York for Hanukkah. We had two vehicles. One was a mitzvah tank, not like mine, but like an American style mitzvah tank. It's an RV. It's a what do they call the recreational vehicles here? Those big motorhomes. And inside there were 12 of our friends. Overload. That's a separate story. We had a Torah and clothing and everything we needed, and lots of catering because we were doing two major Hanukkah parties in upstate New York for two communities in Olean and Jamestown. And my friend who lived in Steenburg, little town with a cornfield. Anyways, we were driving up there. And on the way, we see there's a major accident. There's a vehicle that's overturned. So what was our reaction? Let's go help out, right? You see a vehicle's overturned. When we were kids, we were 18-year-old, 17-year-old schnooks. But let's get out of the car. Let's help out whoever it is. It was a major snowstorm. And you know what happens when we get out of the vehicle? To our shock, it was our colleagues, it was our friends, it was the mitzvah tank that flipped over. Dealing with that and then calling for medical attention and everything else that happened. It's a separate story. I won't go into all the details now. We wound up getting broadcast on TV and we invited more people to come to our party. Many of the people who came to the functions the next week said they only learned about it from our accident and they wanted to come help out. It derailed the whole thing. All our food was gone. Luckily, we were able to rescue the Torah and the tefillin, and most importantly, our friends. But that reaction happened to Rabbi Leo D. last week. There's a terrorist attack. In his wildest dreams, he wouldn't have imagined it's his wife and daughters. Why am I mentioning this story? Because sadly, we know that the two daughters were immediately dead on scene. They were too brutally butchered. The Rebbetzin, Lori, she was critically wounded, and they rushed her to hospital, and the doctors tried everything they can to save her life. Unfortunately, they determined she was too far gone. And while Rabbi Leo D just buried his two daughters on Chalamayid, and a family of 7 was reduced to 5, but the doctor said that she wasn't going to stand much of a chance either. That means 3 members, that would be reduced to 4. 3 members of the family murdered. The doctor said, look, while we couldn't rescue, they couldn't save her life. There is a chance that she can save other people's lives. We know it's a difficult time for the family and not a time to discuss it, but we can't do this without your consent. And the doctors said to the rabbi, talk about it with your family, if you're surviving children. I don't know if there's other family members, maybe from her family who are concerned. And if they could seize the opportunity within that time frame, while before her heart gives, then her organs can save other people's lives. And that's what happened. They made that decision. And one kidney saved, I don't know who they saved, but one kidney saved a person's life. The other kidney saved someone else's life. Her heart, her lungs, and her lobe of liver all went to save other people's lives. 5 organs. So you're talking about a person who was murdered, yet saved 5 lives. Yeah? Oh, so I was thinking maybe that should be the next day's shiur. I have information on all this, and I can make a slip. I'll give it to you in a nutshell now. But if you want to go in more detail, maybe we'll leave that for our medical series. If I'm going to prepare for the Hatzalah event. But what I'll say is as follows: halachically speaking, you have to do everything you can to save another person's life. However, you cannot do it to the detriment. You can't take someone else's life, right, to save another person's life. And there's many scenarios. For example, there's 3 cardinal laws of the Torah that can never be violated. You can break any law of the Torah to save a life. You know that. You could drive your car on Yom Kippur to McDonald's to eat a ham if it means saving a life. Yeah. Okay, so I'm giving you extreme examples. You could do anything it takes to save a life, any life. Okay, I'm not going into the specifics of the halacha that we could go into in another time about the parameters, what it means to save a life. I mean, take an example. A few weeks ago, the team from South Africa and a team from Israel and other teams, I think, from Hatzalah went to Turkey, where there was an earthquake, and they went to rescue lives. They were told to continue working on Shabbos. And I remember a year and a half ago, it's almost 2 years now, there's a member of our community who I daven with in the mornings, whose parents were living in a building, Champlain Towers in Miami. You remember the story? I think in 2-3 months will be the second anniversary. We're talking about America, Miami Beach, a place that, I mean, like the Titanic, unsinkable, untouchable. It's America, first world. And what happened there? In a very upscale apartment complex, they heard some rumblings, and all of a sudden, the entire building collapsed. Not from an earthquake, not from a tornado, not from a hurricane. Well, there was rupturing of the structure of the building wasn't being properly looked after. In both of these cases, the rescuers were told, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. As long as there's a chance, even on Shabbos. Now, halachically speaking, on Shabbos, we don't take care of the dead because there's not a life to save. Which is why when somebody calls the Chevra Kaddish on Shabbos about, God forbid, losing a loved one, they send Gentile people to handle the body because a dead body is actually halachically muktzah. A corpse is muktzah. Because you can't save the life. There's nothing one can do. But as long as there's a chance of saving a life, like in the Champlain Tower story, the building collapsed, but there's a chance, an opportunity to save a life. Keep looking. The earthquake in Turkey a few weeks ago. The team, and these were my colleagues, friends from Johannesburg who went, doctors and paramedics, searching for life. Because as long as the chance there's a life to save, you continue to rescue. The same thing would apply to a fire. Again, I'm giving you halachas that have a lot of complex details to it. So if there's a fire, if the fire is not going to if it's not going to harm anyone's life, let the fire be. We're not worried about property, about material things. However, I remember there was a story of a bungalow colony in upstate New York a couple of years ago. There was a fire there on Shabbos, and they took everybody to go out of the colony, and they and a bunch of the bungalows, including the shul, burnt down. They rescued the Torah, they rescued the people. And the Rav, great rabbi there, said they were foolish, stupid. You extinguished that fire. Why? It's very nice, practically speaking, you saved every life. But what if that fire would have spread further? What if there's a life behind there? You don't know. Don't take a chance. As long as there's a chance there's a life that is at risk, you save a life. So going back to Lori D in Israel and your question, Randy, about just this idea of saving life. There's 3 cardinal laws. Everything else could be violated. Give me any example of a halacha. You could violate it, except for 3. What are the 3? You cannot betray God. Infidelity would come in a second, but infidelity both to God as well as to human is not allowed. Which means idol worship, no. Look at Hannah and her 7 sons in the Hanukkah story. They each died rather than even pretending to worship an idol. Okay, so we don't betray God. So idolatry, forbidden. Adultery, forbidden. So we cannot commit a forbidden sexual act just to save a life. And the 3rd one is murder. You cannot murder, you cannot take someone else's life in practical terms just to save one's own life. So an extreme example, a terrorist gives you a gun, says, shoot that person or I shoot you. Are you allowed to shoot that person? No, you can't take someone else's life to save your own. In the medical example, like what we're going to talk about now, in the case of Lori D, it's a little bit more complicated because it's a little bit more nuanced, because here there's brain death. And brain death is debated in halacha whether that's considered death. But we know that death is imminent. In that instance, now if let's say somebody says, you know what, I'm not interested in living anymore, but I want to at least give my organs to somebody else. Here, take my heart, give it to somebody. Take my lungs, give it to somebody. Can you do that? No, because you can't take one life to save another. Now, medically speaking, although I'm not a medical professional, even if I'm a paramedic, generally speaking, dead bodies, a dead person, their organs are no longer of much value to save someone else's life. But as long as the heart is still pumping and there's still oxygenated blood going around the organs, so it's only in that short window of time when a person's brain dead to cardiac termination, is it possible to actually harvest organs to save another person's life. And in that, today I'm giving it to you very simply. If you want to go into a halachic discussion about it, we could do a whole presentation, because there are different opinions in halacha whether brain dead is considered actual death. And that's where the debate comes in. But if we consider brain death, as most modern, I think all modern science says, is no people have come back from brain death as far as I know. Maybe there were some isolated cases back to a healthy living. Therefore, while a person's brain dead, where they know it's imminent that there's going to be cardiac cessation, then that's the time to harvest organs. Now, a good example of that would be, although the terrorist attack is one, car accident. But maybe before I give you that, I want to hear what you have to say.
I just wanted to ask you, was that terrorist who's giving you the gun to shoot somebody else to save your life?
Right.
Can you shoot the terrorist?
Oh, that would be a great idea. That would be, in fact, encouraged to do, because that's saving your own life. And in Torah law, that's called self-defense. And the law is, which means somebody's coming to kill you, you get up and kill them. That's where preemptive strikes come from, and you're allowed to. That's not considered murder, that's considered self-defense. Of course, it's hard for us to make these types of decisions ourselves, but that's a very good point. Now, another digression could be, there was a case in Israel a couple of years ago in Netanya, where there was a terrorist attack. I think it was in 2014. I happened to be in Israel at the time. You remember there was a lot of rammings and crazy stories. I mean, unfortunately, now there's a whole spate of those going on again, where a terrorist opened fire, and luckily the bus driver neutralized the terrorist. That terrorist was not killed. You know, you got to know when they say neutralized, oftentimes they're trained to shoot in the leg, not to fatally kill them. Although the terrorist oftentimes kills others. It's interesting that the law is that they have to shoot him in the leg or somewhere. Anyways, the terrorist was arrested, but had to be treated in the hospital for his wounds. And then the news came out that the person who he shot, thank God wasn't killed, was also in hospital. They're both being treated in the same Israeli hospital in Netanya, at the Leonardo hospital that was built by the Klosenberger Rebbe, who was a Holocaust survivor. And the doctors, while they were treating the victim of this terrorist shooting, actually determined, or maybe it was a stabbing, that this person had a tumor. And now guess what the terrorists claim? You know, the doctors realized, had it was a malignant, but what do they call it, where it's silent? What's the term for it in medicine? Huh? No, I'm looking for another word for asleep, but what's it called? There's another word for sleeping. Huh? Dormant. Dormant is the word that you can. Nascent? Okay. Dormant, nascent tumor. They didn't know. There was no telltale sign. You know, unfortunately, like the Gemara says, Yedias machla chatzi refuah. When a person is aware of a disease, it's already half the cure. Because you know, at least you could go to the doctor and get it treated. In this person's case, they didn't know. It was sleeping. Right? It was nascent. Nobody was aware. But it wasn't benign. It was malignant. And had this terror attack not occurred, it could have kept on, metastasizing, and it could have killed them. Thank God he was in theater being treated for the terrorist attack on him. And now the doctors were able to find this tumor, and his life was saved. Guess what the terrorist says after that? He shouldn't be prosecuted. He should be rewarded. After all, he saved a life. All right, let me show you my driver's license, okay? Here is a New York driver's license. Could the people on the screen see it? I should have put this on the screen. I don't know why I didn't put it up. In the back of my driver's license, it has these words. It says, I hereby make an anatomical gift, and you sign it. Okay? This is the American way. Opt in. In Sweden, and other countries, maybe Switzerland, I don't know which other ones, they have opt out. Automatically, if you get a driver's license, you are an organ donor unless you sign your license to say, I opt out. Anyone have a South African license on them? You want to check if it's present on your license too?
No.
It's not. Interesting that South Africa doesn't even have it at all. Personally, I agree with that. I don't know why we're mixing that into driver's license, but I guess the idea is that if, God forbid, somebody's in a car accident, then there's, if it's a fatal accident where there's not much hope in that person's survival, then at least if they sign this, the hospital can use their organs. Can a Jew sign this? You know how you study Gemara, it depends. So there's a wonderful organization, and my mother-in-law's in town. Maybe I should bring her to talk to you one of these days.
Yes, please.
Yes, please? Okay. So I will try to organize maybe this week or next week if she's able to come. She's a wonderful and amazing woman. And that would be worthwhile to meet her. And she has lots of great topics. I'll ask her to come talk. My mother-in-law is involved in this organization called HOD. Doesn't stand for, sorry, it's called HODS, HODS. It doesn't stand for Hebrew Order of David. It stands for Halachic Organ Donation Society. You can Google them. And she's involved in that organization. What they've done is they've created a card that's the same size as your driver's license. You keep it with your license. Okay? So wherever you keep your driver's license, you keep this card. And the reason is because they encourage people to be organ donors, because donating an organ is very good to help save lives. And the Torah tells us to save lives, right? However, we know that if you've ever been to the moratory here in Johannesburg, or what we call the morgue, where Rabbi Haller and I come from, is not a very pretty place. Okay, and the coroner's office in New York makes sure that it is held up to certain standards. But in South Africa, I've been there, and if there's a coroner, in the States, they actually there's an official position. I don't even know what the responsibilities are, but the coroner's office, maybe I'm not even pronouncing the word correctly. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if that position exists here, but if that position exists here, they have a lot of work to do, because I had to spend time in the moratory here, and it's not very pretty. It is not pretty at all. Thank God there are people in our community who are involved, who with accompanying, they go with a pathologist and they make sure that it's done in the most dignified and respectful way. But here in South Africa, there's very interesting laws. A member of this program who used to come here, Wendy Savitson, passed away. I don't know if I should be saying this. It's a patient confidentiality. Maybe I just did the wrong thing. Anyways, there's not going to say anything too wrong. You didn't hear it. Good. Problem is it's on YouTube and Facebook. But the point is she passed away. And the family told me that the funeral was a little bit delayed because they had to go to the morgue. Luckily, they got a religious doctor to go with. But why would she have to go to the morgue? She passed away in the hospital from, I don't know, she had COVID, by the way. Yeah, COVID's killing people. I've been to a few funerals in the last few weeks of people from COVID. COVID still exists. I mean, we're not wearing masks anymore. We're not doing any of the precautions any longer, but it exists, I tell you. Yep. But usually the people who are affected by it have comorbidities and other complications that, unfortunately, it affects them. What's that? No more vaccinations available.
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
Boosters.
Boosters. Is it worthwhile even getting it? It's a separate discussion. We in Hatzalah had to get it. We were probably the first 5,000 people in this country who got them, because when we came here, when they arrived, Hatzalah made sure we were like first on the list as frontline workers. Yeah.
Is it worthwhile getting a flu vaccination?
Annually, I don't know. I find if I take the flu vaccination, I get flu symptoms, and when I don't take it, I don't.
You're supposed to, because it's your body fighting and body
Right. Yeah.
But flu and COVID are related.
Well, I'll tell you, I got the COVID vaccine in February 2021. Like I said, from the very first people who got it here, got the vaccination. I don't think I had COVID before that. I was not sick, thank God, for at least a year before. And then I didn't get sick at all throughout that winter. I usually, by the way, almost every winter I wind up getting sick. I don't know, we're here, we're exposed to each other, et cetera, I wind up getting some kind of a flu. 2020, I did not get sick at all. I don't think I was sick at all in the whole of 2020. February 2021, I get my COVID vaccine. I felt sicker than ever for that day. I was cold, February, cold. I was wearing a sweater and a scarf.
So you're supposed to.
I am. Now, when my family got COVID, in fact, I tested positive for it in July. The week of my son's bar mitzvah, when we were preparing to welcome 30 guests from family from overseas, we had to tell them all cancel because we all have COVID. The rest of my family had, I don't have to say quite severe, but they lost their taste. They had symptoms that were quite, all the COVID symptoms they had. Guess what I had? Nothing. I had no COVID symptoms. So in my case, it worked. I was like, I guess because I had the vaccine, I was not feeling sick at all. I felt sick when I got the COVID vaccine, and I felt nothing when the rest of the family was not feeling well. Thank God for that, by the way, because I was able to tend to them. I was able to be there when Hatzalah would come to care for us. Okay, besides for being part of Hatzalah, so I was already someone involved. They sent a nurse in every day. We were, thank God, one of us was able to be there for the rest of us. So, the vaccine is certainly a worthwhile thing to get, but there's debates about that and discussions, and some people saying now that the vaccine's a mistake. Anyways, don't go there. Not to go there at all. I don't think I even got to where I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to conclude this story. It's to answer your question in a nutshell. You have to save a life, not to the detriment of one's own life, right? So you can't take a living person and say, you don't deserve to live. Which is why you're not allowed to sell organs, which modern countries, first world countries, forbid the sale of organs. It has to be a voluntary donation with no strings attached. Because otherwise, what happens here in Africa, unfortunately, is people can't afford to support their family. So what do? They sell their organs. I have a brother-in-law in New Jersey who donated his kidney 15 years ago, who donated his lobe of liver. Why could you do that? Because those are not detrimental to your life. Let's go from the easier to the more severe. Blood. Blood is healthy to donate. It helps save lives. There's a shortage of available blood in our country, and it is healthy for us to do this. The South African Blood Bank, SAMS, what do they call, National Blood Service, SAMS, comes to Hatzalah every 6 weeks and does a blood drive. I can't say I give every 6 weeks. I used to in the States. Here it's a little bit more complicated. I want to, but if they're only available on a Sunday when I'm officiating a wedding or when I have other functions, I unfortunately can't come. And it's not so easy to just go every 6 weeks myself, but when they're already at Hatzalah house, I do it. So maybe not every 6 weeks, maybe I do it every 12 weeks or whatever it is, but I am a proud donor of my blood. I wound up probably doing it 3-4 times a year, whereas I should really be doing it a lot more frequent than that. I should probably be doing it, 9 times a year?
No.
Is that too often?
A minimum of 2 months in between.
They say 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm probably doing more of the 2 months. I'm probably doing every second 6 week. In the States, I used to do it every 6 weeks. Blood is easy to donate and it saves lives. Do it if you can. There are lots of rules. So for example, I like to go when I go to the States, they never let me do it. But if you just came from Africa, they won't let you do it. I don't know why, but they don't allow it. Carrying things. If you're on medication, they can't do it? Really? Okay, maybe it depends. Maybe it depends which medication you're on. Really? Okay, I guess it depends what medication you're on. But they say it's good and it's healthy, and every 6 weeks. Your blood will regenerate. Okay, and it's good for you to have that. Let's go to the next thing, platelets. Platelets are also easy to donate. A little bit longer of a procedure, then a blood donation, still good to do it. Platelets will regenerate. You'll help save a life. Go and do it. Getting a little bit more invasive. What about bone marrow? Bone marrow can help save a life. My mother was a bone marrow recipient. Unfortunately, she did not survive it, but I knew it could have saved her life. She didn't want her children to do it because she felt it would be harmful to us. It is an invasive procedure. If you're queasy, if you're worried, if you have comorbidities, then you don't have to do it. How about kidney? My brother-in-law donated his kidney, like I said. People ask why God created us with 2 kidneys if we could survive on 1. Well, maybe some people need it. Maybe some people have kidney problems. Then in that case, you need both. But if you're able to survive on 1 kidney, people often wonder, why do we have to? Well, perhaps it is in order to save another life.
You ask the same question. Why did he give you such a big liver?
Well, let's go to liver. My brother-in-law, Rabbi Ephraim Simon, he saw somebody needed a liver, and he went, and that was more invasive than the kidney, he said. And they went and donated a lobe of liver. These are all organ donations, or maybe there's another word for it than organ, because I don't know if blood is not an organ. It is an organ, okay? These are all organ donations you can make, and not only won't it hurt you, well, some of them will, and then it's your decision, but you're not allowed to harm yourself. Medical science is advanced enough to say that you could donate a lobe of liver and it won't be detrimental to you. Not everybody's able to do that, but blood is certainly easier. It's just a little prick. You're sitting there in a chair. They give you orange juice or whatever you need. In the States, they bribe you with a lot more than just a cup of orange juice like they do here. Last time I went, they gave out movie tickets. I think mine, not only did it expire, we don't take our kids to the movies, so it's probably gone. But my point again is, in the States, they usually throw spreads. So you can have they incentivize you with a whole meal, and then they give you a voucher for something, so you really feel you got something for. Maybe that's what keeps people going every 6 weeks to give blood. But my brother-in-law did not get paid. The only payment he got was the privilege, the merit of saving a life and knowing. He was inspired when he saw an ad, father of 12 kids. He said, I have 10 kids. If I, God forbid, needed a kidney, wouldn't I want somebody to come forth to help me? But what about other organs, vital organs, a heart, lungs, cornea, maybe brain, if they don't do brain transplants yet. But those are a lot more, those are life-threatening. You can't. A person cannot survive without lungs. A person cannot survive without a heart. A person cannot, then those cases.
You've got 2 lungs, why not?
In those cases, it is like Lori D. She was dying anyhow. And that was the window of opportunity for her to save other lives. And that's what she did. So while I didn't get into our discussion what I wanted to, I will say as follows, that the message is, in life, we could see every day, we could live both ways. One is God created everything before us. So we realize we're the pinnacle of creation. We are the ultimate. We can save a life. But another way of seeing it is, like the rabbi had this other note in his pocket, which said, I'm but dust and ashes, a little mosquito, a bee, a bird, it all came before me. I'm the last. It all depends on how I live my life. Am I living morally debased? Then I'm the last. I'm the lowest. Look at that story. While a terrorist lived in the lowest way, taking other lives, here's a woman who was dying, and yet she managed to save lives. When we were kids in school, it was her husband's decision, but my point is, of course, that she managed to save lives. When we were kids in school, we had a teacher who took out a butterfly. I'm sure I told you that story numerous times. I remember it. Took out a butterfly and said, I'm going to put the butterfly in my hand. Right now you see it's living, but I'm going to put it in my hand now. And I want to ask you, dear students, is it alive or is it dead? So I'm going to ask you, let's try this out. Is the butterfly alive or is the butterfly dead? It's alive. Bam! Not anymore.
So you understand Schrodinger's cat.
Let's try the other way. Is the butterfly alive or is it dead? Well, you just tried that one. Try the other way. Say it's dead. I let it. So what did the teacher tell us? The answer lies in your hands. And that's what we realize. Which way will I live? Will I live as the pinnacle, the ultimate purpose of creation? Will I live as the lowest? It's in my hands. I can decide. That's for me. Every single day, I have the opportunity to make that decision. And the second point I want to conclude with is the fact that the laws of Lashon Hara, of slander, of gossip, comes right after the animals as well. As Rabbi Yisrael Salanta put it, we have to be as careful with what comes into our mouth, with the food that enters, as what goes out of our mouth, the words we speak. So there again, we realize it's up to us. We can make or break. Words can uplift, words can destroy. Words can heal, words can harm. It's up to us what we're going to do. So with that, ladies and gents, we will conclude today's shiur, even though we didn't really get into it. So tomorrow, please, God, I want to go through the Omer, and then I want to talk about how to like the people you love. We'll turn it into a nice little shiur. Yeah, just the second one at a time.
Once again, synchronicity. Because the current shiurim that I'm giving on Thursday, we're talking about our purpose is to choose to use our free choice.
Oh,
We're talking about free choice.
there you go.
And
Awesome.
that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I like that. We're going to talk a lot about free choice in the coming weeks. So it's really going to be a theme that we're going to go through, because when we talk about the supernatural, I want to just tell you that while there are opinions in the Talmud and in Jewish law, and you'll see them, we're going to start off with dreams next week, and we're going to go into other areas. There are opinions that say that those are real. You know, you listen, dreams exist, you have dreams, but are you controlled by your dreams? We'll talk about it. Yeah, Rennie.
If the person had problems taken on the max is incomplete, so what happens?
Okay, what we'll worry about Tchias HaMesim when it comes. We still bury the person with like all of the tubes and anything else that may contain their blood, but if they're able to, saving a life overrides that. So if they're able to save their heart, I remember flying with my cousin once on a plane. My cousin worked for an organization. Today he's a big lawyer, but he would work for an organization where he was the personal transporter of organ transplantation. So he would take a heart in a box and he'd carry that box with him on the plane, keeping it cold, because the heart needs to remain in a frozen box. Obviously got permission from the airline before and told them this is what he's doing. He would take that box with him. And that was the story. Yeah.
I just want to give an answer to Renee. Hashem created the body. You using part of your body to make a mitzvah. Surely we should have faith that Hashem has the skill to replace it.
Yeah. No doubt about that. But we are careful generally, God forbid a car accident or any other, somebody dies in the hospital and it's messy, or even when we do a Hatzalah call and we performed CPR and we have a lot of equipment and stuff, whatever is there that was part of the person, we bury it with them. But in the case of a organ transplant, the organ is transplanted to the other person, and we don't start crisscrossing and returning or any of that. All right, ladies and gents, that calls it for today. Enjoy lunch. We'll see you, please God, tomorrow.